adversity. Our conversations don't shy away from the hard things. That includes grief, trauma, loss. Our goal in each conversation is to take you through a journey towards healing and resilience and, yes, purpose. If you've ever felt like your world has been flipped upside down and you wonder how you're ever going to make it through this, whatever your this is, well, this episode is for you. Maybe you've been carrying a silent pain. You're trying to lead or live or simply breathe while still balancing that hurt, that pain, that heartbreak. Well, today's conversation is about what it actually means to rise from the ashes, not by ignoring the pain, but actually by facing it with intentional and transformational purpose. You're going to hear from someone who's been through it. She's speaking from lived experience and powerful purpose. She's going to take us through and explain an unimaginable loss that actually has turned into a movement, a legacy that empowers and absolutely promotes healing. This episode is your reminder. You don't have to actually stay stuck in the pain. There is power in your survival. And today, we're going to explore how to activate it. So let's get into it right here on the flip side. Trauma, toxic stress, broken habit, and hurting heart don't define destiny, but peace isn't passive. It requires an exchange. To create a flip and access peace in the middle of the pieces, you are challenged to make an exchange of the lies that have kept you mentally hostage in basement moments. Resilience isn't about bouncing back, but bouncing forward. Living Strong, the flip side of adversity, brings powerful stories and fearless conversations from experts in the field of business, relationships, emotional, physical, and mental health, and faith-based communities. Each episode creates a brave space with powerful tools from authentic connections. Tune in as we dig in with Dr. Jackson on the flip side of adversity. Hello and welcome to the flip side of adversity. I am Dr. Veirdre Jackson, the CEO and creative behind Living Strong Consulting, and I am in a place of excitement as well as really digging into inspiration as well as connecting with someone who is so living purposefully, that this conversation I'm hoping will be one in which you actually can put down or reframe, as she would say, your lived experience that might be one that is painful. And I'm so excited also because we connected through Unica J, and sometimes when you have those chance weekends where you attend something, you're not sure how it's going to go, and it literally becomes life-changing, and you have new relationships that you know are going to stay connected, and as Unica would say, would bloom and blossom beyond the event. So that's this kind of conversation. It's a conversation with someone that I haven't known long, but deeply impacted me from day one. And I think she's going to do the same for you. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Krystal Gonzalez is a transformational coach, activist, and founder of Redirecting Our Culture Incorporated, a nonprofit born from the tragic loss of her daughter to gun violence. She empowers grieving parents to turn pain into purpose through leadership development, healing centered coaching, and legacy building. Her voice and advocacy have reached national platforms. She is currently speaking at several events centered around mental health, women's empowerment, and gun violence. Her digital ebook, out now, called The Survivor Power Playbook, Turning Crisis into Triumph, is absolutely a practical tool for any and all of us who have experienced some type of tragic experience, and it's time to make a flip. So welcome to the flip side of adversity conversation, Krystal Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, Dr. V. I am so excited. Thank you for all those wonderful, wonderful words. And as you said, by chance, me being invited to this leadership retreat, I was able to meet some amazing, amazing women. And I also see these relationships blooming and blossoming into some really incredible things. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Absolutely. I'm going to give a shout out to Kim. Kim is in the
Yes.
chat. She's saying hello. So it's awesome. Thanks for tuning in, Kim. She was a part of our blooming experience. So let's jump into it because you chose to entitle this conversation in connection to your book, and you reference survivor power. Can we just start there by explaining what does that mean for you? And what do
Oh
you hope it
God.
means for others?
Yes, so your survivor power, and we all have faced. Life is nothing but a series of changes, and in this life, you're gonna face some struggles. In this life, you're gonna face trials, tribulations, hardships, those sorts of things. And most times, people would curse their storm, right? Because it
Mhm.
doesn't feel good while you're in the mess. It feels really painful sometimes, right? It feels unfair. It feels, like you're carrying this big cloud above you and all those things. Life is beautiful also, but here's the thing: when you come through the storm, when you come through the trial, when you come through all of the hardship, those remnants that were left behind, those are for you to keep. That's your
Mhm.
survivor power. How do you take this terrible, terrible thing and use it as a catalyst for change? How are you going to be better from the experience that you were given? And so I teach people, about how to use our adversity in ways that are going to push our purpose, right? Because God doesn't give us anything without purpose.
Yeah. It is an often stated reflection that you have the opportunity to turn your pain into purpose. And you actually did that with the loss of your daughter. How would you, can you share with us how that loss actually has led to something when I'm coaching others is called post traumatic growth? You created something on the other side of tragedy and you've turned it into an entire nonprofit. Can you help us walk through how you were able to turn that loss into something that is actually creating a national movement?
Yeah, so to get there, I have to kind of backtrack from the incident, the impact, right? The point of impact. I have this amazing, beautiful daughter, 18 years old, Aliyah, just graduated high school. 3 weeks later, she happened to be involved in Baltimore's largest mass shooting. 30 people were shot that day. 30. Two people passed, Aaliyah being one of them. And I remember being on the scene that night, standing over my baby under a sheet. And I tell these stories because unless you've been through that level of trauma, people have no idea why it is that I move the way that I do, right? I'm standing over my baby as hopeless and as helpless as I've ever been in my entire life. And so I knew right then and there I had no details about the event until later. But what I saw is what I saw. My baby is the only one that's out here under a sheet. And I said to God, I nearly demanded, God, if this is Aaliyah, you have got to show me what this is for, because none of it makes sense. You know, my baby, she always had a curfew, not until she was 18. She turned 18 in April, but until she graduated high school. And so I knew, God, like this, none of it makes sense, but you've got to show me what this is for. And so from then on, I started God started to reveal things to me because I went seeking for answers, right? I had to. I just couldn't sit still. I couldn't sit still. So, everything in my faith tells me when Apostle Paul says, all things work together for my good,
Mm.
right? That means there's got to be a benefit wrapped up in this problem. And I'll tell you, I didn't see it right away. I didn't see it right away, but I knew for sure that things were starting to be revealed to me. And so that was the catalyst, that was the spark. And yeah, I started to see a lot of things, a lot of areas that needed my attention for sure. And that's what God was saying. I trust you with this.
Wow. And the rest of that scripture is for your good and his glory. And because he
Yeah.
was able to trust you, you are operating as a divine gift to so many families and communities with your nonprofit, Redirecting Our Culture. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you
Oh,
created that reframe?
oh, absolutely. See, it goes back until my baby, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
here's one of the factors that we just could not understand. So it doesn't matter how you raise your children, both parents in the home, straight A student, college bound, all the things that we were supposed to do, we did. When she graduated, I looked at my husband and I said to him, we did good job, babe. We did a good job, right? I felt like we needed to recognize that, right? Well, here's the thing. Here she is under a sheet, and as obedient and respectful as she is, she just would not get up for me, right? So here's what I'm seeing in my head, what I'm feeling in my body is, wait a minute, I so those factors, and we did all that we could do. Now we absolutely have to affect the world. So it doesn't matter how you raise your children, they still have to commingle with the world. So how do we affect the community around us? So that I tell people all the time, I wouldn't care if Aaliyah was in a party in the Hollywood Hills or in Brooklyn, Baltimore, Maryland. She should have been able to come home that night. Bullets should not be flying through the air. And this is not a way of life. So, redirecting our culture came from that experience. We have got to redirect not just the culture, black culture, not just the white culture, not just the underserved, underprivileged, but this culture of violence that we see here in America. We've got to restore respect, pride, and dignity back into each individual, back into our communities. Because when you respect yourself and you have pride in your community, that means you are keeping the grounds. You're not waiting for city officials to come sweep up outside of your home. You live here. When you respect yourself, the one thing that you're not doing is going out and shooting and killing people.
Right, right. And the opportunity to, as you've shared on social media, the ability to reframe and not get stuck in the grief, your continued focus on recognizing that even in this loss, there was still work for you to do. There was still work for you and your husband to do. It didn't end with her loss. And so you shared that as you continue to get information, you realized that there was a lot more for you to continue to do. And so, how is redirecting our culture creating a movement?
Right, right. So, redirecting our culture, we are a survivor led organization. And I think that is what stands out from many organizations. Why? Because we are moms who have been touched by this god awful thing. No one understands the pain of losing a child like a mother who's lost a child. And gun violence in particular happens to be a completely different beast, right? Because I tell you this, Dr. V, when I think about purpose, and I think about all the people that I meet, God did not give me car accident with Aaliyah. Now, if you tell me
Mhm.
something happened to my baby, I would think, she was driving, maybe car
Mhm.
accident. God didn't give me illness with Aaliyah. God didn't give me drug overdose with Aaliyah. God gave me gun violence. And so this is the place where I belong, where I need to be, where I need to be affected. So redirecting our culture, we understand that as survivors, we have got to grab hold of survivors. And I say this because most offenders have been a victim themselves. They
Mhm.
have experienced some form of trauma, whether directly or indirectly. They have lost their fathers, their uncles, their mothers, their sisters, their brothers, and nobody really took care of that problem. And so I always use my family as an illustration. I don't want to pull from anybody else's stuff. When I tell people, what does that look like for my then 10-year-old son? He's now 11. Interesting enough, his birthday is tomorrow. He'll be 12. Um, and he's so excited about that. But when I say to people, Jaden was affected by this at 10, what does that look like for him 10, 15 years down the line? Is that now introducing more violent behavior, knowing that his sister was murdered in the streets of Baltimore? Is that introducing drug and alcoholism because he can't cope with the loss that he's experienced at such a young age? Now, this is one family, my family, that I'm illustrating. You magnify that by the thousands of family who've been affected, and I'm just speaking about gun violence, right?
Right.
So we have these people who have all of this unpacked trauma and don't really know how to take care of it. So with redirecting our culture, it is important that we offer services to family at impact. It's important that we are there giving peer-to-peer support. I've noticed certain areas with different agencies that haven't really grasp the delicacy of what this looks like
Mhm.
with dealing with a family who've just been impacted by gun violence, right? And I always say this, they definitely need an office in place, um, that's run by survivors, that's for survivors, because no one really understands what that looks like until you've been affected in that way. So, with Redirecting Our Culture, we offer the peer to peer support. We offer services for our mental health because we have got to take care. We cannot be repeat offenders. The
Mhm.
violence has to
Mhm.
stop with us. That means we have got to do all that we can to cultivate this community where we're going out now and showing people how to be, because unfortunately people are learning, they're learning the wrong way and they're learning it without anybody teaching them, and you have to kind of teach people how to do good. You do.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
really
Well, that actually takes us back to what you had shared earlier. In order for someone to lose connection with their value and their identity, something had to have happened.
do. Mhm.
And there wasn't anyone there available to help them process. There wasn't a community, there wasn't a circle, there wasn't a tribe.
Right.
Something that happened didn't have space, a safe space for it to be processed, to be reordered, and allow the person to start a healing journey. And so that disconnect continued to become a chasm, and it literally can consume us. And then
Right.
out of my pain, without knowing how to process it, the old adage that hurt people is a real thing. And so you've really outlined how, not just as individuals, but as community, we can begin to navigate healthier ways to process and to not only just survive, but have survivor's power, which is
Right.
so significant.
Right. And that's exactly what I intend to do with each and every heart that I touch. Is first we have to put things into perspective. And I always go back to, when you know the truth, the, what does it say? The truth shall set you free. And so we've got to identify one thing. It's always important for me to share with families that your baby is okay.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And you don't have to worry about your baby because they are in their best form. It's
Mhm.
us that's left here with a broken heart. So, how do we, with our broken heart, continue to actually reimagine what your life looks like?
Mhm.
Because you had
Mhm.
a life with your baby in it, and
Mhm.
now you have this whole different identity with your baby out of it. So, how do you reimagine what your life looks like in the next few chapters? So, yeah, we go deep. We go deep.
And that leads to the fact that grief is a process, and but unfortunately sometimes people get stuck. So when you're thinking about or even considering that there may be someone who is listening today who is in a stuck place or even just in the earlier stages of grief, how would you like to actually encourage them in this moment to find their way to that path of resilience?
And that is such a good question. And it leads me back to our framework for legacy building.
Mhm.
And here's one phrase that I use all the time, all the time. You probably see it tattooed on my forehead at one point. Please don't hold me to that. We we can't bring them we can't bring them back, but we can bring them with, right? That goes
Mm.
back into
Wow.
building our legacy project. So no, the one thing I want forever is to have her back, but I
Mhm.
can't have her back. So now I get to pour the love that I have for
Mhm.
her into the projects that I build, into the businesses that I build, into the scholarships that I form, into the foundations that I form, all of those things. So we've got to put the pain somewhere, right?
Yes.
That's the thing. It's sitting and it's causing tumors to form in our body, and it's causing dis-ease in our body, which is causing blood problems. We've got to put this pain somewhere because grief will kill you.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I always try to make sure that people know, um, listen, your baby is okay. That's important to know. But now what are we going to do with this love that we have for them? Where are we going to put it? Where are we going to put that pain and that love into? And that goes back into the legacy building projects that we do. Yeah.
Yeah. I can think that doing this work and taking such a deep dive of walking alongside of other families is such a heavy load. How do you actually manage your own emotional wellness as you're walking through this with others?
And I just had an emotional response because I didn't think we were going to go there. But it's so interesting because I just had this talk with my oldest son, right? So I'll share this with you guys. When people are seeing me, what you are seeing now is the product of years and years of development, right? So I have to share this part because people just don't get it. They don't get me. And it's fine because you probably never will. Well, here I am, a young girl whose mother was addicted to drugs, father was not in her life. I'm the oldest of five siblings, so I had to make sure I would feed them, dress them, get them dressed for school, send them out into the world so nobody would know what was going on at home so that we wouldn't be separated, right? I had to raise myself. So, Dr. V, when we talk about the traumas, I've been through, this is the definition of you don't look like what you've been through. So it's the alleyways, it's the drug dealers, it's all the things, right? And I had to go through all of those things to be the mother that I am to my children. I had to go through all of those storms to be who I am today, to face my biggest challenge yet, right? And one of the things that I will tell you, I would hear all the time my mother yelling and screaming at me, and she would be like, "Why are you crying so much? Why are you so sensitive? Why are you this?"
Mhm.
And the way she would say it would almost feel as though it was a weakness, right? Because
Right.
I don't know why I'm so sensitive,
Right.
and I'm crying
Right.
while I'm saying that, right? All the while, I didn't know that it was a spiritual gift that God had given me to be
Mm.
able to reach the hearts of these grieving mothers and fathers that I deal with every
Mhm.
single day. I didn't know that it was a spiritual gift that he was giving me, that he was trusting me with their hearts. So when you ask, how do I do it? I don't know. How I do it only by the grace of God. And yeah, I really don't know. I don't know why people feel safe enough to come to me with their most hurtful things. I really
You
do.
you also identified, I think about our last two episodes before yours, we had Brandon Brown on talking about trauma through the lens of gender, but really also diving into like the ecosystem of healing, and how
Yeah.
sometimes we are born into an ecosystem that is doing the best it can out of survival and experiences, but it's what we do with how it impacted us that becomes our job in carrying forward, and
Yeah.
recognizing that even though you went through so many hard pieces, that gift that God gave you is something that you allowed to continue to flourish, as opposed to diminish it or try and stomp it out because your perception was that that was somehow a bad thing or a weakness or something to be ashamed of.
Mhm.
You actually allowed it to continue to blossom, bloom, grow, to become who you are, never realizing that something that was deemed to be a weakness in your childhood is a powerful force that you're using now to change the lives of other people. Wow.
Absolutely amazing. I'm amazed every day how God blows my mind with the things that he that he trusts me with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if statistically, if I'm going to be honest, I'm supposed to be strung out myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's how I'm not supposed to have a husband I'm not supposed to have these things. I'm not supposed to
Have those
have,
experiences.
sit still, also knowing that my baby knows who I am.
Mm.
And I can literally hear her say, "Mom, what are you doing?" Like, that's not you. You got to get up. I can hear her saying that. So that pushes me, right? And
Yeah.
I think about all of the things when I say, honestly, in my years, my baby was my greatest teacher.
Mm.
I can say that to this date. She was my greatest teacher, and discovering who I am. You know.
Yes. Can I ask, what have you discovered about you in this part of the journey? Because you've
Ooh,
referenced her as someone who's holding you accountable for when you want to give up, when you want to
yeah.
stop. Her literally who she was as a person,
Mhm.
as a woman, is now holding you accountable in this space to keep
Mhm.
going. And who who have you discovered you are on this side of your adversity?
So I've always taken the reins. I just had to in everything. But it was always somewhere where I would kind of shrink myself to not be seen. And I say this because there were places that I had other businesses. I've had amassed a large social media presence, all these things. And then I heard God say, "What are you doing? That's not what I told you
Mm.
to do." So I stepped off of social media for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it because God has always brought me to. Um, I'm a teacher at my core. I know that that is
Mm-hmm.
my spiritual gift. Also, I have to teach something, and it's
Mm-hmm.
always the word of God. It really is. But in this awakening, after, it's almost like you have no choice. You
Mm-hmm.
have no choice but to do what I told you to do, what I called you to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so that discovery is really surrendering all,
Mm.
surrendering all to my assignment, understanding that absolutely nobody, and I said this at the retreat, nobody can do the job that God appointed me to do but me.
Mm.
That's the
Mhm.
surrender of it all. I can't trust somebody to do another this job because this was appointed to me. And I wish more people understood that, because that eliminates all sense of competition. You are appointed to your assignment. So you
Mhm.
cannot watch somebody else's coveting their things, looking left and right and try to see, well, this person, listen, unless you're willing to do what they've done
Ooh,
to have what they have, I
yes.
guarantee you, people will look at me and say, oh, this, that, you're this, you have that. Not one of them would be willing to trade places with me.
Yeah.
Not one of them.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
just understanding your assignment is specifically for you and owning that. That's the biggest thing. The
Yeah.
biggest discovery is owning it.
Yes. When
Mhm.
you said oftentimes people are looking and judging or coveting or wanting or hating all of those things, but they don't understand what it took
Mhm.
for you to stand on the platforms. And most of the time, people don't want to encounter what it costs to be able to live a purpose, to live on power. So paying more close attention to what my assignment is versus worrying about how you are living your assignment.
That's
And
it.
yeah, and
That's
it's such a byproduct of our culture, as you're sharing, redirecting our culture. It's such a part of our culture to look at someone else and want something else instead of paying closer attention to what your assignment is. S- Uh,
I think it's so interesting because when you understand, and I heard this analogy many many times. I'll say it again. Tiger Woods. When we say the name Tiger Woods, what do we think of? We think of golf.
mhm.
When we say Michael Jordan, what do we think of? What sport do we think of? Basketball, right?
Basketball. Uh huh.
So what they're doing is they're operating in their gift, their calling. That's their thing. You're not going to see like, I don't know, like Bruno Mars playing hoops, playing basketball. That's not his calling, right? So
Mhm.
here's the thing: God gave us those spiritual gifts, He gave us those gifts and talents so that we would need each other, and people miss that. There's
Mm.
one thing that I hate to do, and people know it because now I'm being thrust into having to do all the things, web design, marketing. I hate it. That's not my gift. Put me on a stage and I talk. That's what I do, right? But see, he gave somebody else that gift so
Mhm.
that I would need them. So when you understand what you have and dominate in the area that God called you to, then you will understand your purpose and what it is. Like, I mean, I don't ever want to do somebody else's job. That's not for me,
Right.
and I don't expect anybody to do my job.
I think it's important as a leader of any call or mission or purpose for us to really hone in on what is my role in this. And so that helps me stay more purposeful. But when you think about leading and grieving, what's the connection between the two? And how can loss actually awaken that purpose driven leadership in other
Gosh,
people?
such a great question. I'll tell you this. I have to preface this with saying I feel like in the first year, God was working on me in stages.
Mhm.
So I didn't have all the answers. I didn't, people were asking me, well, Krystal, what are you doing? Why are you so far ahead? What are you doing? You're making this happen. And I had no answers for them because I was actually doing.
Mhm.
And what I would say, I remember listening to John Maxwell. Are you familiar with John Maxwell?
Absolutely.
Leadership development, of course.
Hmm.
So I remember listening to one of his videos. It had nothing to do with grief. It had nothing to do with anything, but this was right in the beginning stages because I was trying to figure out in my head, how am I supposed to live without Aaliyah? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What is my identity? Those are all first initial impact. And I remember coming across one of John Maxwell's um, videos or listening to audio actually. And what he said was, if you are driving home, you know your normal routine. You can pretty much drive without even thinking about it, right? You go from point A to point B, you're on autopilot, right? And so picture this, you're going home one day and it's dark outside and it may be raining. So now you have a detour. There's a pattern interrupt in your normal routine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Life, right?
Yes.
Crisis, right?
Yes.
Events. There's a pattern interrupt. And so you have to take the detour. Well, you don't know this
Mm-hmm.
new route. It's unfamiliar to you. You just want to go home, but you got to take this detour. So it's dark and it's raining, but what do you do? Well, what do? You focus on the illuminated light that's 200 feet in front of you, your
Yeah.
headlights. You focus on that 200 feet ahead of you. And that tricks something in my brain to say, Krystal, you don't have to figure out how you're going to be for the rest of your life. You have to figure out this 200 feet ahead of you. You have to figure out what's right there, survive that. And so another 200 feet, another day comes, 200 feet, that's it. All I was focused on was that 200 feet ahead of me. I didn't worry about what's happening next year or creating events or going to the white. I wouldn't worry about any of that. I had to survive those small steps. So with grief, I think um, n- not putting so much pressure on yourself to try to be better. I think
Mm.
that's a big one because everybody knows me. I'm a big crybaby. I cry and fall apart all the time. The reality is, this girl was with me all the time. 50,000 calls a day, 1,000 texts a
Mm-hmm.
day, and all of a sudden it's just broken and it's cut off from me. So adjusting to life without your loved one, it takes time. It's a new dance that you're learning, right?
Yes. Yes. And you're allowing yourself the time to actually not be okay. I think what you just said is so powerful. As we're leading ourselves in life, don't force yourself to feel better. Take the steps that are necessary 200 feet in front of you. But what's powerful in what you just said is you kept taking those steps.
Oh
You
yeah.
didn't stop.
I remember hearing, be so busy this year that you look up next year and say, oh my God, I did all that. And I had that in my brain. I needed to find a way, again, I had to
Mhm.
put this pain somewhere. And
Mhm.
so, whether it was making a phone call that may have terrified me before, oh, I'm calling somebody. They need to know what happened. They need to know. Like, it was all of those things, going to a town hall, like all of those things. And it just kind of snowballed. Why? I stayed in motion. See, even in our trials, God calls us to serve. So I knew that. So how do I serve people with this deep, deep pain? And I realized as I was sharing more and more, I was getting messages from people saying how much my transparency was helping them on their journey. And I'm like, that's it. That's what
Yeah.
God is telling me this whole time, this whole time. What
Yeah.
happens to us, what people miss all the time, is they personalize it so much. This happened to me. This is my
Mhm.
pain. It's never for you. It's for you to get the lesson, but it's always for who's coming behind you.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
every single trial that you've gone through, I can guarantee you are going to meet someone on your journey that's coming up behind you that has that same thing coming up, and you now get to share your experience to help them through their
Mhm.
journey.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's leadership, that's movement, that's power. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book itself? What can people gain from getting access to the ebook?
Yes, yes. So the Survivor Power Playbook, this is my framework, and everything that I do is based on biblical principles. And I, why? Because principles don't change. They don't change if you're a nice person, if you're a bad person, they don't change. Following these biblical principles have helped me through my entire life. And so what I did was resort back to some of the things that I've already known. So I have a 5-step framework that'll help anybody through any crisis. And when we talk about the art of reframing, really is understanding, instead of taking that negative connotation of the awful thing, you got to find the good in that thing that's going to help you to maybe strive for something else another day, maybe strive
Mhm.
towards something else. And so I tell people all the time, the Survivor Power Playbook is to help anybody who is facing any crisis in life. And it doesn't have to be death. We
Mhm.
grieve a lot of things. We grieve a
Yeah.
divorce. We grieve losing a job, right? We grieve losing, things in our life that mean something to us brings us grief. So, how do we handle life's challenges? Well, challenges come not to make you crumble and ball you up and put you underneath the bed or the sofa. Crisis comes to qualify you,
Mhm.
because if you were never touched by that thing, how can you give your opinion or experience on it? Crisis comes to give you credibility.
Yeah.
Crisis comes to to prove you. I would even say that.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
say you believe and you walk and you, well, what are you going to do when you're now faced with this thing? How are you going to, crisis comes to prove you in that moment, and if we look through any part of history, anything that ever made any change was born out of crisis.
Mhm.
All of it born out of crisis.
Yeah, it's so true. It is so true. And I think through how identifying a framework to help someone, and I love that you said we grieve a lot of things. So loss creates that grief. And so it can be a lot of different things that we're grieving, but how do you actually create the steps or the framework or creating that next step within that 200 feet for you to be able to move through? And so it sounds like your framework creates a process. I know we call the show the flip side of adversity, but sometimes that can sound like it just happens when it
No.
really doesn't. It doesn't. It is a flip. The flip does happen, but there's momentum and movement that happened before the flip actually occurred. And
Right.
it sounds like your framework helps people get into that movement, the momentum, so that they don't stay stagnant and stuck.
That's right. It was so important for me to put actionable steps in the book, because it's one thing to talk about it. Everybody talks about, their journey, and they go from point A all the way to Z and never give you the framework of how to actually get there. And I knew that, like, it has to be actionable steps, right? Because when you do one thing, it leads to another and another. And again, as long as you're in movement, and here's the thing, it takes application.
Yes.
This is not second nature. This is not something you automatically know, but it actually takes you putting effort forward so you can see results. So you can see the results that you want. I don't think anybody on this planet, whether stuck or not, I don't think anybody on this planet wants to suffer.
We
But
don't. We
we're
avoid it.
unconsciously we're unconsciously choosing suffer,
Mm.
right? Because you don't understand, now you have to actually do things along your journey to get you out of those places, that the pits. You have to do things to get you. You almost have to force yourself in certain situations. But if you don't, here's a Myron Golden. Oh my gosh! So he's infamous for saying, the law of entropy and energy, right? It doesn't take you can it doesn't take much for you to not wash yourself to all of a sudden start to smell, right?
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is
Yes.
not wash yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But the energy you put into washing yourself is what keeps you clean. So you actually have to do something, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the same thing if is being lazy and being in motion, those kind of things. Like, you actually have to do something. So yeah,
You know what? Can I lean in? Because you
sure.
said something for me that I think is just in my spirit. So sometimes when the pain is so heavy, we can become loyal to the pain and want to stay connected to it out of fear. Can you relate to that? Is there something you
So
can pull out of that for us?
so it's so conflicting, right? Because I made a comment that says I don't think anybody wants to suffer. Well, the flip side of that is, how can I be happy when I lost something? So there's that guilt that you
Mm-hmm.
feel for wanting to smile again, for wanting to have joy. And how are people perceiving you? And during your pain, you're supposed to be down. You're supposed to be, just. debilitate, all of the things. And I will tell you, I had that same thing. And for me, it wasn't, am I supposed to smile again? For me, it was, I am so goofy. I'm a comedian. I love to laugh. I felt that I can't express that because I was so sad, right? So
Mhm.
I understand where that comes from, but some people feel that guilt that they can never have joy again. And yeah, God wants you to have all the emotions
Yeah.
because all of the emotions push you to different places to do different things. Anger forces you to make a change about something you didn't like, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
all of our emotions have a place. So yes, joy, and you don't have, they're not, they can coincide. They don't have to be completely separate from each other, you know?
I love that image that they actually can coincide.
Yeah,
So the pain and the joy can actually live in the same space. And you haven't um, disrespected the hurt or the tragedy that happened. It actually, honestly, they both can coincide together. That is such an amazing picture in my head. When you think about your book, and I know you referenced reframing, is there one element? You said that there are five principles that shape or form your framework. Can you
mhm.
share one of them and take us a little bit
Sure.
deeper into it?
Sure. Actually, it's so interesting because I just put up a clip about it today. So one of the things I talk about is whatever you call a thing, that's what it becomes in your world, right? So we have to be careful because we are feeding ourselves. Whatever you say, you shall have, right? Your language and your language and your thoughts, they're they work together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes,
so
they
you got to be
do.
careful about the words that we use. So whatever you call a thing, that becomes what it is in your worlds, right? So if you call it defeat, guess what? You're going to act and move defeated. If
Mm-hmm.
you call it um, a setback for a comeback, watch how differently you move, right? So whatever you call a thing determines how you move afterwards,
Yes.
right? And then I also talk about how you know you have to be careful about the information that you feed yourself in your circle of influence, right? So let your information match your destination. Unfortunately, we have people around us who are, if you're, especially if you're trying to push yourself out of that dark space, you got to be careful about the people who are still spoon feeding you these things that keep you in a dark place. And you got to get around people who are showing you that there's a different path that you can take on your journey to get out of this darkness and back into the light, because God wants you to come into the light. God wants you to understand that you have an assignment, you have work here to do. And I know, as a parent, as a mother who's lost a child, I know how we can feel like, yeah, I want to be with them too, right?
Yeah.
Except the thing is, God kept you here. So, we still have work to do while we're here.
And you slid right past it, but I want to go back to it because that's a whole phrase right there, that your information needs to match your destination. You slid right past that. And I was like, that right there is
You'll give me the
golden.
talk, I will go. Yeah.
that that transcends in multiple phases of life, not
Hmm.
just grief. That's in
Yeah.
business, that's
Yeah.
in parenting, that's in leadership. Your information needs to match your destination. That is power.
Yeah.
Oh, you went right through that.
You know what? Again, a lot of people don't know. Like, I do have background in business leadership development and that sort of thing. So that kind of just popped into my brain. But this is, again, like, well, taking that's kind of what I've done. I've taken a lot of my past experiences, past skill sets, and poured it into the work that I do.
Mm-hmm. So that work that you
Yeah.
are doing now
Hmm.
absolutely impacts how you're pulling from past
That's it.
experiences and taking all of the skills, all of it is coming together right now. Ugh. So, how can people actually access the ebook?
Oh, absolutely. So you can find the to redirectingourculture.org, and you'll find the Survivor Power Playbook there. Again, that's redirectingourculture.org. This is the nonprofit organization. We are coming up. Can I even go right into Aaliyah
Yes,
Day? Because
yes,
I'm on the
absolutely.
website and I'm seeing the picture. So
Absolutely.
thanks. So Aaliyah Day, July 2nd, 2023 was the day my baby transitioned. And as I was leading up to that day last year, people were asking me, well, what are you going to do to memorialize? And I'm like, the thought of it made me sick to my stomach, right? Because planning her funeral was hard enough. And
Hmm.
because she's a teenager, I have been introduced to a lot of moms who lost their children who are
Hmm.
teenagers. And I've been to the vigils, I've been to the candle, I've been to these places, and they were horrible. Not in the sense that they were done wrong, like badly. No, it was beautiful ceremonies, but to see these young people, keep in mind, these are children who are crying and hurting. And again, for me, I absorb all of that. I didn't
Hmm.
want that. I did not want that. It was hard enough to see Aaliyah's friends so distraught. So July 2nd, 2024 comes around, and I said, I'm going to turn this into a celebration of life festival. And so I bring the community together. So we have our basketball tournaments, we have our food trucks and our vendors and the DJs out there. We'll have activities for the children. These are all the things that I know my baby loves. Like she loves when people come together, and I love when people come together. And so July 2nd, 2025, we are having our second annual Aaliyah Day Celebration of Life Festival on July 2nd from 3 to 9 p.m. at Sawmill Creek Park in Glen Burnie. Yeah,
Glen Burnie, Maryland. Yes.
Glen Burnie, Maryland. That's right. Yes,
Yes. Yes. Ah, I
I'm
the
excited.
picture of celebrating life, and you've identified yourself as a nonprofit leader. You've identified yourself as a parent, as a mother, and you identify as an advocate. As an advocate in that role, what do you hope to create an impact with? How do you hope your advocacy voice becomes heard?
Right. So my main objective again is to see the change that we need. You know, we are experiencing here in Baltimore the largest amount of young people dying, becoming offenders themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to change that culture of violence in of
Mm-hmm.
itself. So my advocacy comes from I'm holding everybody, every organization, every agency accountable for their roles and what we need to see change. And I think part of that discovery when I go back, it's so interesting because I say nothing is off limits, because when you force a mother to face her worst fear, every mother would say losing their child is probably their worst fear, and she
Yeah.
experiences that. Nothing on this planet will shake me the way the death of my daughter has. And so as an advocate, it's important for me to call out the areas that need attention. We have community organizations who are using and mismanaging funds that are supposed to be there to support our youth, and yet they're lining their pockets or doing other things and taking trips. Like these things, if what you were doing was working, we wouldn't be at our worst where we are. So um, I I don't shy away from using my voice because I think too many people have accepted this as a way of life. And I don't believe that this should be a way of life. No one should have to, have a chance of walking out of their door and being hit by a bullet, because that is really, I spoke to a mother who lost her daughter. She was getting out of a car, out
Mm.
of dance practice, our dance practice teacher car, to walk inside of her home, and a bullet comes from a half a block down and pierces her daughter in the spine, and just that quick, her daughter's gone. So then we are left with these questions: if she would have stayed in the car a little bit longer, or if she would have got to her door a little bit quicker, she would still be here. Well, see, here's the thing. She should still be here. Aaliyah should still be here. Many babies that I talk, the parents that I talk to, innocent children being caught in the crossfire. So advocacy is top priority to me until we see the changes that we need to see. My primary focus is to keep more of our children alive.
That's a whole word. And being able to use your voice to inspire others to do the things that may be hard, the things that may have them uncomfortable, is is a charge that you carry with strength. And I encourage you, as I often encourage many, to keep speaking. And we also are going to be having an event and want to formally invite you into our LitCon event that's going to be happening in September, where we encourage authors to share their stories, to come together, to identify how to access a platform that will allow them to share the gifts that are connected to their assignment. And the beautiful part of LitCon is that it also, in a very similar way, is a space to bring people together to be able to celebrate our voices, to celebrate our stories, to celebrate and identify ways to move forward, and to move forward in a way of authentic community. There's nothing like LitCon that's out there. And so we're inviting authors like you to enter into the space, to bring your story, to bring your book, to bring your message, so that we can absolutely, again, create a movement of positive energy for healing, for community, for authentic spaces. So I just want to make sure that I invited you. I'll send the link to you for you to take a look at it.
I
But
will be there. Yes.
I just love your energy and how you are
I love the
intentionally
energy.
creating a space for your story to be heard, but you're also empowering others to tell their story.
Thank you. And I
Oh,
love your energy. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, I really appreciate you sharing this space with me today. This, I tell people all the time, it really is the hardest thing to do,
yes.
but I have to do it. It's hard because of the subject matter, and it's not like I'm
Hmm.
speaking about anybody else's kid. This is my baby,
This
you
is
know.
yours.
And if I can, I just want to make sure
Oh,
everybody gets an opportunity to
please.
see her.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Aaliyah.
Yeah.
Sorry, the light
Yeah.
is there, and
Yeah.
I just can't believe it's still so surreal to know that she's not coming back, you
Yeah.
know? So I'm just like, okay, what are we going to do? I talk to her all the time. I talk to her all the That's another thing that I tell parents, just because we have this separation, because here's the thing, they were in their body 1 minute and they were out of it the next.
Mm-hmm.
But their energy never goes anywhere. They lost their suit, right? They lost their earthly suit. But just because we're separated with our babies. I mean, I think that's impossible to do. So talk to them often, just continue to share. And I think the saying when we say their names, the underline of that is we don't ever want you to not say their names. They're our favorite topic to talk about. Not only that, but we don't want you to act like they weren't here.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Because they
Right.
were here and they left
Yes.
impact. Yeah.
And as in your advocacy space, as we say their names, it holds decision makers accountable for recognizing that a powerful force was here and is not here, and they should still be. And so
Still be here.
saying their name, honoring the celebration of life, honoring her name, creating spaces for us to celebrate her and you, your continued journey of leading and supporting others. As we kind of wrap up our time, I can't believe how fast our time goes by. What is one call to action you have for listeners who are listening to this episode either live or in the replay?
Wow, a call to action. I might, it might be different than anything that you could possibly think of, but one call to action to everyone watching is to not ignore our youth. Don't walk past them as if they don't exist. Don't run across the street from them and ignore them. These babies need attention. The underline of all of this, creating violence and all these things, is they want love, they want attention, they want to be seen. And so I would say, if you see a young person who looks like they may possibly need a hello, please stop by and say hello to them. Aaliyah would tell you if she was here, I was always that I am that mother. That if I see young people in front of my place, and I know these children and they happen to be her age, and I know that their parents aren't in their lives, if I'm cooking already, I would send food out to them. And Aaliyah would be like, my mom said, eat it all. And then she'll come back in the house, run back in the house. So I don't ever want to, especially if a child feels insignificant, feels invisible. I never want them to feel like that around me and around you, because they matter. They're very special, and they don't know. It's really up to the adult people to teach the children, right? That's it.
That's it. That's it in a nutshell. And it wasn't something that felt odd for me, because I think that's takes us full circle back to the beginning of our episode together, that when you help a young person connect with their value, it is very difficult for them to pick up a gun or continue violence, any human being. And so being proactive by seeing young people, loving young people, speaking to young people, and listening, actually
Right.
listen to them, is a powerful truth. Oh, thank you,
Absolutely.
Krystal. Thank you,
Thank
Krystal.
you.
Oh, this has been such a rewarding and powerful conversation. And just again, before people leave off, how can they access the book one more time?
Sure, you can go to redirectingourculture.org. You'll find the Survivor Power Playbook on the website.
And how can they follow you on social media?
So you can follow me on Facebook, Krystal Gonzalez. I'm on Instagram, and my handle is at Inspire Me Cree. So it's Inspire Me Kree, and that's on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah,
Wonderful.
and X.
And Krystal is with a K for our
Yes.
those who are listening to us on the podcast. Well, there you have it. I tell you, everyone, as we opened this episode, I shared that this conversation, it may have been heavy. It may have brought back memories for some. It may have triggered for some. And so I hope you take care of yourself. And it offered resilience. It offered a framework and opportunity to not stay stuck, but to look for those 200 feet, steps, spaces that's right in front of you. This is not a time to give up. Keep going. And as you keep moving, you create that momentum that eventually creates that flip. It's not like a light switch. It is a journey. It is not easy, but it absolutely can help you tap into your power. So again, I thank you, Krystal, for being a part of another flip side of adversity conversation. And I hope our listeners, same time, same place next week, right here on the flip side. Stay connected, stay resilient, and keep going.
Oh, this is so beautiful. Thank you.